Hi, John.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jan.
Hello.
Okay, I'm gonna call this meeting to order, the select board to order, call the select board to order, and we have a one agenda workshop. Or learn information session. We're the learners, John's the teacher, John Fowler. Um, John Spear, because you have delved into this in more detail than any of us, I think, since you created the timeline, would you take the lead here and ask the right
Sure.
question? Go ahead.
Be happy to. First off, John, do you know everybody?
I believe so. So far, yeah, I've met everyone either online or before.
Okay, you know Jan.
Yeah.
Just Mel. I don't know if you just met Walter a second ago or not, but anyways.
Yes, I did.
And Owen. Just a little background. Where South Thomaston still operates on a calendar year, fiscal year basis, and we still we collect taxes once a year, or at least we traditionally have. I know that's said every year at town meeting. And we also are one of two towns in the entire state that use what's called the alternative nomination procedure to elect select board and school board members. Basically, people are supposed to take out nomination papers ahead of time, and then they're voted on at town meeting as opposed to at a referendum, with polls from 8 to 8 or 10 to 8 or whatever. So we are considering changing three of those. And I do realize that the selectmen can change the fiscal year on their own, but I think the sentiment is that we would like to get at least the town meeting to authorize us to do that. I think we haven't voted on it, but that seems to be the sense. And I realize that tax bills are actually set, year by year, tax collection dates. But, and of course, changing to secret ballot does require a town meeting vote. So we're in the process of gathering information to perhaps implement this change next year. I think that's what we're thinking about. And I know, John, you and I talked, and you indicated that you were the town manager at the time. St. George went through this process. And I do realize that St. George has a charter, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a little different than South Thomaston, and no, we don't have a charter. So this was, I guess this was, it actually was a charter amendment, is that correct, or?
For the change in fiscal year, that was not a charter amendment. That was, under state law, we had to follow what was there.
Yeah, okay. So, so John, I guess we just want to ask if you would just sort of walk through how the process worked in St. George. I know you told me that it was kind of initiated by the budget committee as more than the selectmen, and I don't know what powers your charter gives the budget committee, but anyways, could you just walk us through a little bit? And then I think the best approach is with a small group is just ask questions as we go along, unless somebody is opposed to that. I don't imagine you have a prepared statement, John, so.
I do not.
But why don't we just start off and you just kind of walk us through the St. George history?
Okay.
And your impressions of how it worked.
Okay. This took place probably about 10 or 15 years ago. So, I'm sure there's been some things that have changed as far as the rules and regulations and laws, but not that the state changes things on a regular basis. But anyway, it was initiated by the budget committee. They felt that this would be something that would put us on the same with the school budget, same fiscal year as the school budget, and that it also would help with, we would be able to eliminate the tax anticipation note. And personally, I was not in favor of it. Bottom line would, by switching over, we were bringing money into the town's coffer, and therefore cash flow was better and we did not have to borrow tax anticipation funds. But the way I saw it was we were taking money from the taxpayers' pocket and put it into the town's pocket. There was, the budget committee also said that it would be better for planning. They said, you know, I believe you have your town meeting in March. And that's part way into the year. You know, it had worked for quite a few years before that. I always sort of looked at the major expenses that were taking place were during the construction period during the year. So from, you know, April or May, if you were lucky, and then, you know, June, July, as far as you could until the snow decided to fall. So I was fine from a planning standpoint. Budget committee was, no, you really need to have everything in place and let people know what's happening, you know, before they vote on everything. Again, you know, the selectmen never took a stand on it. For whatever reason, every time the issue came up, you know, we have a five-person board, and every time it came up, we only had 4 people there. And as the discussion went around the table, it was obvious there was 2 in favor and 2 against. So as far as the item on the warrant, never had a recommendation from the selectmen, just a recommendation recommended by the budget committee. You'd have to talk to them as far as what their feeling was. It did pass in the town of St. George. I got behind it 100%. This was something we had to do. I will tell you that in going forward with it, the one thing that my experience was that you have to make sure that you know why you're doing it. You have to have, you know, as usual with the public, you have to have crisp answers. This is what we, you know, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it. They don't want 10 pages of information. They want the soundbite. Once it did take place, as far as educating the public, that was a challenge, because everyone was used to getting their tax bill, you know, and usually in end of July, first part of August. Taxes were due in September. Been going on for years, and then trying to tell people that, okay, half of it's due in September, and for us, the other half was due March 31st. As I said, it was a lot of information. We used our newsletter. We used the local newspaper, anything we could to get the information out. We held some public hearings, and as you're well aware, you know, you're lucky if you can get 5 people to show up for a public hearing. But we tried everything possible to get the word out. Our experience with, you know, with some people is like, well, you know, I don't have any money in March. That's where I'm, you know, taxes are due April 15th, and, you know, income taxes and everything else, and I just don't have the money. And our response was, you can pay, you know, some like fishermen is like, you can pay in full in September if you want. People did do that. I believe they're still doing that. Instead of having to deal with the twice a year, they found it easier and just said, okay, we'll pay it up front in September, and no problems from that. But again, you know, as you're aware of dealing in a public situation, change. People do not like change. I say the majority of people do not like change. They go, why? They have to ask why. One thing that we did find out from administrative standpoint too was there is interest charged for the September 30th payment in our case. We don't go through the lien process. The liens only begin after the March 31st payment is due. If no one pays, then you begin the lien process. And even with taxes due once a year in September, we always had April as when we sent out the 30-day notices, the taxes had to be due, we needed to clear off all of that stuff. We found it difficult, and I think they're still finding at the town office now, they still run into some problems. It's like the 31st of March is when the second payment is due. And here we are sending out 30-day notices in the middle of April. It's like, well, you didn't even give me a chance to pay. But as I said, it has improved. The initial shock, I guess you could call it, to people who were just trying to understand it, trying to learn it. And as I said, it went well, but it is an education process. And as I said, I would say the first thing to do is to make sure that at the very beginning, you have a clear, everyone's on the same page. This is what we're proposing, and this is why we're proposing it.
John, can I jump in and ask you a question? When you went to the change in fiscal years and the 2-year tax bill, you had already made the change to a secret ballot previous to that. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, we were already on that. Yep.
Yeah, and that had been some time.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yeah.
We went into a charter in 89 or 90, I think it was.
Oh.
We adopted the charter.
Yeah, so it had been a long time. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
So you only instituted 2 changes, if you will, 2 of the 3 that we're contemplating at that time.
Right.
Okay. And you, when you and I talked, you highly recommended going the 18-month budget route as opposed to the 6 months, which I agree with you. And because the law does allow either option.
Right.
But 6 months would be immensely confusing to people in terms of when tax bills were due and liens. And
it was easier, instead of saying, a different tax bill and an assessment on the 6 month and then again on the year and a separate vote on everything. It was easier in going to town meeting and say, this is a budget for a year and a half. And in most cases, you will see that, the dollar figures, if you're looking at this year compared to the previous year, it's 1.5 times. And, as you can, you can go through your budget, in certain situations, like with, let's say, for paving. Paving from, you would typically have a January to December. And then if you're going to add another 6 months, January to June, you would not necessarily have paving in there. So there were items like that did stick out, and people were like, well, why isn't that 1.5? But in, the school, the county, different items like that you would run into, and you just have to have an explanation to the people of this is why it's happening, and next year we'll catch up on it.
John, you talked about secret ballot, changing to secret ballot, but do you do secret ballot for approval of the appropriations, or is that still done in town meeting?
That is still done at town meeting. The election is secret ballot, Australian ballot. We've been, they've referred to it as Australian ballot as long as I can remember. It never was anything. It always was nomination papers and everything else. As far back as I can remember, years and years ago.
Thank you.
John, we currently have an article in our town report, correct me if I'm wrong, Owen, that gives us authority to spend from January to March, because as you say, we're 3 months, actually, when we hold our town meeting at the end of March, so we're actually a real truth 3 months into the year. And this would require us to have a budget, if you will, expend for 6 months. Did you do something to extend that authority, or did you just, I know a lot of towns that have March town meetings don't even have that article. They just simply follow the 200-year-old tradition and how did you deal with that and stretching out your budget that was in place from say January 1st to June 1st in the first year?
That was included in the 18-month budget. It was done at town meeting at the usual time in March, so it covered that fiscal year and the next calendar year up until June 30th. And we also, what we did, went right out as soon as it came in. I'll get back to it. It'll come back.
And this is, oh, and just, John Spear, you're absolutely correct. We did include that in our town meeting warrant. And so we currently have the authorization for January 1 of 2021 through town meeting to do no more than 1/4 of last year's budget for expenditures. So we already have the authority kind of by us that time to then present the 18-month budget to the citizenry at March town meeting. And then if, they approve that and the other warrant articles we have, by the time that budget expires, theoretically, we're on to now a June town meeting, and we would be asking for authorization of a 1-year budget. And then our fiscal year would start the following month on July 1. So we would get approval for the budget prior to new expenditures. But for this gap in 21, as we figure this out and try to present it to the folks at town meeting, we already have that authority.
We don't have it to June 1st. If we wanted to change our fiscal year to June 1st this year and the 18th month, I don't want to get bogged down on this too much, but I guess we got to think that through a little, how we would do that. Because if we change, let's say we changed and had the town meeting to change the fiscal year in November, then our fiscal year would run through June 30th, and we only have authorization to spend through March 30th.
And to
Can we increase that authorization at that?
Well, that's what I was
town meeting?
wondering. That's what I was wondering. I think that's a margin note question.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things, as myself and other folks in the office and talking it out with folks we've come across, one of the more confusing things, John Spear and I have talked about this. Some of the mechanics behind this are not overly complicated. We ask a question, and if we get approval, we go forward. If we don't, we don't. Some of the timing has been the confusing thing, just to ensure that there aren't gaps and that we aren't putting ourselves in a position to where we're spending money when we don't have authority, or we've somehow, overlooked a timing thing. The timing seems to be the more complicated part, if there is some.
Well, and of course, this year we waited to June anyways because of COVID. So.
That was one thing that we had done, the thought came back. The one thing we did also do at the time we changed our fiscal year, we changed our town meeting through a charter amendment from March to May.
Yeah, okay. And of course, we don't have to deal with that because our town meeting is set by the select board, not by charter.
Right.
On that real quick, I haven't looked into, because you're absolutely correct, John Spear, the board sets town meeting. Historically, it's been in March. I didn't know, maybe John Fowler or someone else, if we were to transition to that 2-day town meeting, the bifurcated town meeting that we've discussed, to where there's secret ballot voting done in conjunction with state primary voting and other state and the school budget and all that stuff. And then the following day after we've done the secret ballot referendum, that's when we have open town meeting for the appropriation and budgetary and sometimes ordinance or zoning things. Do we have to get approval from the citizenry for a bifurcated town meeting versus what we have right now, which is 1-day open town meeting? I should have looked into it. I haven't, but I didn't know if someone knew.
I can only say from our standpoint, it was that was something that was put into the charter, that there would be 2 town meetings held each year, 2 annual town meetings, one day following the other, The first one would be for the elections. The second day would be for budgetary, financial, and other articles. So that was a charter change.
So there are actually two town meetings, because I know a lot of towns do, as Owen says, it's the same meeting. It's just, you deal with Article 1, you elect the moderator, then you have the polls, you elect the selectmen, school board, and whoever else is elected. And then the next day or 2 days later, you have Articles 3 through whatever. But it's all one meeting.
The issue we ran into on that was that if it's one meeting over a 2-day period, when you open the polls, before you open the polls, you elect a moderator.
Right.
And that moderator is there for that, theoretically, is there for that whole period,
Right.
2 days. And people were feeling they weren't represented. They had to be there at 8, prior to the polls opening at 8 o'clock in order to have the moderator they wanted for what we always consider the town meeting.
Yeah.
So that's why we made an amendment change to say we have an annual town meeting, but it would be called by 2 warrants.
Yeah.
One for the vote and one for the budget stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, we've never had a controversy over a moderator though. Yet.
Always can happen.
Oh, I know. I've seen him at the school district.
Yeah, let's hope that Mike doesn't retire during our lifetime. That will settle that probably.
But that's interesting. Another something else to put in that little margin note to look into how we deal with that. So John, we got 5 minutes with you left. If you had to give us one piece of advice, what would it be?
I guess I go back to what I said at the beginning is just to make sure that you're united on the action you want to take, and that you have the a very clear and simple thing of this is what we're proposing and this is why we're proposing it. Several bullets to follow it. You can always expand on it, but just have that as the to address the people of the town and say this is what we want to do and this is why we want to do it. Because it's a complicated thing and it takes more than just a few words, but to get it out there for discussion, you need to have just a few bullets to address.
Yep. So Jan, any questions?
None come to mind, John. Thank you. I appreciate your insight and experience in this with St. George. I'm familiar only because I pay taxes in St. George as well. So for the American Legion Post,
Yep.
I'm familiar with the twice a year tax payments, which I've always thought was actually beneficial by having to come up with money, all the money at one time. It was a lot easier to do it in 2 pieces.
Yes, I think it is now that I'm retired.
Yeah, right. But I can also understand that you allowed people to wait until the second payment before you considered them in arrears or started the lien process for 30 days. So.
But you did charge interest on the portion that was due September 1st.
The unpaid portion, because if someone paid half of it, half of the 1/2 that was due in September, or they were paying installments monthly, whatever was due, it was whatever amount was due on the September 30th balance due, that's what interest was charged on.
Right. Because if you didn't, it'd be absolutely no incentive at all to pay.
That's right.
Right.
John, one quick question. You said that you were not in favor of this when it started, but then you embraced it. So what changed your mind?
The thing is that it's the position of town manager. They asked you your opinion. I gave my opinion. And when the people said, this is what we want to do, and then I just jumped on board and said, yeah, this is what I was told to do, and let's go for it.
So was your job life better or worse or no change as a result of all the changes?
It took probably 2 to 3 years to get people to understand it. And then there was a few stragglers as usual. But as I said, it was just, you know, it's like having teenagers. How many times do I have to tell you that?
Did it eliminate the need for a tan?
We did eliminate the tax anticipation though, but it was something to me, you know, my argument on that too was that, you know, I could borrow the money at a lower rate and I would pay, say, a certain amount at the beginning for the school payment or whatever was needed. And then the balance I would invest, and I was investing it for more than what the interest rate was. So as I said, I probably, if I was asked if I would be in favor of doing it, I would probably still say, you know, unless I could be convinced of anything otherwise, that there was another reason, I would probably still stay with it. But
Well, thank you so very, very much, John, and continue to enjoy your retirement. And I'll let Owen have the last question or comment.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I was texting with our next commentator after you, Mr. Falla. He hasn't joined us yet, so we still have a couple of minutes. One of the questions kind of on our end for budgetary stuff, you know, any way that we can minimize human error in mathematics as we put our budget together is like a good thing to be working towards. Did you find that it made crafting budgets easier now that you were on a fiscal cycle that fell in line with the state and the school districts? That's something that, you know, we have to take the last 6 months of last year and the first 6 months of next year to add them up. Again, nothing, it's like not a Herculean task, but it does lead for some projections. As we look at insurances, we can't get you know, proper insurance numbers. We have to make estimations and buffer that in. So can you maybe comment just a little bit on the budgetary process and whether changing to the fiscal year was beneficial that way?
as far as the planning, you know, some people said it was easy at planning. I really don't think that was a benefit from, you know, planning for, you know, paving for asphalt and stuff like that, because you were so far away from the process to adopt. But from the mechanics of the budgeting, it was, you know, from a personal standpoint in office, it was a situation that, you know, you are so used to a process, you know, okay, this is when the county assessment is due, this is when this is due. And it just was trying to get used to, okay, well, wait a minute, no, we have to look at it from a different standpoint. Once you get past the 18-month budget and get used to that, and then you're on a 12-month, and as you said, it was probably a 2 to 3 year period for not only the public but also within the town office to feel comfortable with what we were doing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And even, you know, recently, and I'm kind of closing in on 2 years here with the town. So I've gone through 2 budget cycles, but even just recently, John Spear brought up to me, as we've talked about state revenue sharing, we've kind of been keeping more tabs on that through the pandemic, because we budget a certain way around that, and now it's going to be reduced. And, you know, got brought up, do we even look at the fact that our revenue sharing is spaced over 2 different years in our case, versus, you know, being able to look at their projections as a whole. And, you know, of all the different things, you know, so still sometimes these budgetary things slip slightly through the cracks because we're staggered 6 months away from most of the other folks that we deal with.
Revenue sharing, I would always look at it from a conservative, you know, any of the different monies coming in. When I budgeted, I always looked at it from a conservative standpoint. And, you know, anything we got above and beyond, it just went in as, you know, additional income, so to speak, at the end of the year. But I felt more comfortable being conservative estimating than, you know, if the state says you're going to receive 115,000, I usually would bring it down to 75 to 85,000 just to be on the safe side.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Yep, anytime. I'll talk to you all later.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Thanks, John.
So our other guest has not yet joined us. I'm sure that he'll be on momentarily. But any kind of board thoughts? Anyone have their mind significantly changed after that conversation one way or the other?
I basically had the same conversation, so before them, so no. And my opposite, I'll say this again, I was probably the least, I did have some hesitancy about having tax bills due in March, but when he explained to me how they did it, and basically he said, well, you're still free to pay it in September then. I said, that's true. And so that sort of erased my reluctancy or hesitancy there already. I already mentioned that to you, so.
He did mention one of the arguments against, which I found interesting, was, and we're confronted with this now because our ability to borrow from ourselves is dramatically reduced. But by collecting the taxes this way, you eliminate the TAN. But as he said, a lot of people said, yeah, so somebody's getting a benefit that I'm paying for is the way that people look at it. Although when we borrow, we're borrowing, on their behalf. It's kind of,
And they're paying
but
the
what?
And they're paying,
Right.
and they're paying for it. They're paying the interest on it, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't think John said anything that surprised me. I mean, I appreciated his insights, but there wasn't anything there that kind of raised my eyebrows or would turn me into another direction.
Yeah.
I think as a group, and I'll bring, I'll make this a discussion item with the budget committee next week also, that we need to be clear and constant in our communications about what and why. And I think the sooner we start that process, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, I would say we should craft a written statement, purpose and a couple of talking points, in writing. So we've all kind of got it, understand it, read it, when asked, answer the same question the same way.
The elevator statement.
Right.
Yeah. And I think something that John said, when Owen talked about the possibility for mistakes it's also the homestead exemption, which kind of forces you to figure it on the state fiscal year basis. So you end up collecting it in different periods. I think you're right, Owen, and I think that probably wasn't as big an issue for John because first of all, he's an accountant by trade, and he was there 25 years. So, I think it was kind of, I don't want to say on autopilot, but the financial end of it, I think, came very easily to him, so. So I think you bring up a good point there, Owen.
Thank you. And Ron Smith is now on and joining us. He doesn't have video, but that's okay. And Ron, can you hear us okay? Oh, and it's connecting. Ron, you there?
I'm here.
Awesome. So Ron, I'll just give a very brief and then probably hand it back over to John Spear, one of our select board members, who kind of led into our conversation with Mr. John Falla, who was the town manager down at St. George. So we just got off the phone with him and he provided, some of the insights from the town office perspective, what it was like dealing with the citizenry, making sure that they were aware, had some buy-in, kind of, how the process went in the year over year. And we brought you in maybe just as a supplement for some of the technical stuff, by way of explanation for those maybe joining us on YouTube. Ron Smith is the president or chief operating officer of a large auditing firm that works with many municipalities throughout the state. So he's worked with and advised a lot of towns as they've done a similar transition. John Spear just stepped away from the computer, so that's okay. But basically, Ron, we just kind of wanted to get, a general understanding, I think more of any pitfalls that you would see. And hey, there you are. Common pitfalls that maybe towns fall into, that if we had, had conversations like this before we started the process, maybe we could mitigate some of those. Or, what have you seen that's worked well or not worked well for towns as they've transitioned from the calendar to fiscal year?
The first thing I'd probably say, Owen, is and the first and foremost challenge is making sure you don't run out of money. So we clearly had some conversation. I understand, that your options are 6 months and 18 months, and you guys are kind of thinking about going the 18-month route. So you want to make sure that the math is going to work, and when coincide and all flow with your assessments. I understand you're going to probably go to 2 assessments a year. I think that that's the right thing to do for sure too, but you got an 18-month fiscal year that you've got to finance. I really don't know a lot, Owen, and I'm more than happy to hop in and understand and gain as much knowledge as you all need me to, but I don't really know what your financial position is. I can only imagine that probably December 31st, 2020 is going to be pretty important, because that's probably going to be your baseline year going into the 18-month transition period. So how much money will you end this year that's about to end? And, and just making sure that you're going to have enough money to get you through 18 months and make sure that when you do your tax commitments, and if that's something you're going to go to, and I strongly encourage you to go to two dates, as far as payments of taxes go, just making sure the math works so you guys don't run out of money. So
Yes,
I think
thank
that's
you.
your biggest challenge.
And I'm happy to, Ron and I have, we talked the other day, we've talked off and on, we work together in different towns, but I would definitely open it up to any board members that have questions for Ron.
Ron, this is Walter Wrights, one of the select board members.
Hi, Walter.
And thank you for joining us. In your experience, certainly in our town, we can change the fiscal year, but the tax collection methodology is a town meeting matter. Do you have any experience of a town saying that, well, we didn't like this twice a year, so now we want to go back to once?
No, never. I actually
the other
think,
way.
Walter, you've got some discretion on your tax assessments too as a board, but no, I've never run into that problem, Walter. The problem that I've really run into, and actually, I've probably been through in the past probably 6 years, Walter, probably as many as 30 or 40, of these transition changes in fiscal years, and whether they be county government or municipalities, the thing that I've run into the most, especially in the municipal world, Walter, is people are actually in favor of splitting up a tax bill twice a year to kind of get a lower tax bill, as opposed to having to come up with this large sum of money, on November 1st. A lot of people, Walter, and I'd say a resounding over 95%, of all the ones that I've been involved in, have been in very, very much favor of that. And that was enticing. That was actually one of the selling features, is taking that municipal bill and cutting it up under, small portions, to the point where, Walter, a lot of the municipalities birth tax clubs, a lot of the municipalities birth monthly payment plans, and I just don't know what administrative DNA, it is that you guys have, but it actually accelerated just having a steady cash flow all year long, and the taxpayers were very much well in favor of that.
So if you were to, what would you list as the top 3 selling points? And I based on what you just said, I think for the population, it's you get 2 easier payments a year instead of 1 big one.
Yeah.
What are the other 2 top selling points?
I'd probably say that's the second selling point, Walter. The big selling point is you as a board now will have. So I'm just trying to do some math. So Thomaston, what is that? Is that Lincoln County?
No,
We're South
Knox?
Thomaston and we're in Knox.
South Thomaston. So Knox. So if you're in Knox County, do you know what fiscal year end they have, Owen? Are they June?
No, they're on the calendar.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Their jail's on the June year end. So we don't do Knox. We do 11 counties, and Knox isn't one of them. but their jail would be on a fiscal year by state statute. Anyway, long story short, where I was going with it, you got the schools on a fiscal year, you got the county jail on a fiscal year. Just having, that information available to you to coincide with your fiscal year end, when you take education, I would argue that's probably got to be one of your biggest expenses in South Thomaston. So being able to know what their budget is, as opposed to having a piece of a budget from the school for one year and then a piece for the other, that to me is information that I would want as you're passing your municipal budget, because that really, we've seen school budgets be municipal budget breakers, at the end of the day. So that to me is a big, 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 conversation piece. And I would put that one right at the top of the list, Walter. The second one, clearly, which wouldn't be far behind from the taxpayer's point, would be an incentive for the taxpayers to not have to come up with this large chunk of money at once, to have to split the bill in half. So I think that that's another selling feature, and I would probably say that those are probably two of the biggest features as far as, municipal year ends. It's really trying to get the stars aligned with the state, trying to get the stars aligned with your school budget, trying to get the stars aligned with a lot of the other external influences that you really don't have a lot of control with as a board of selectmen at South Thomaston. So.
Thanks.
John or Jan?
I'm good. I mean, I'm kind of ready. I'm kind of ready to move on this, to be honest with you. I thought, my only hesitancy was the two tax bills, and I changed my mind on that for the reasons I just mentioned earlier. And now hearing Ron, I think I'm even more convinced.
Yeah. May I just suggest, you guys sitting in your chairs, and I've done a lot of these in the past few years. I think that your biggest proponent would be you guys get in a room, having a public hearing, just not knowing where you're at in this stage and process, having a public hearing, inviting the people to show up. I don't know what you'll get for a turnout, especially during this madness, but actually a lot of the municipalities, that I've gone to, that through their public hearings, they've had some pretty good turnout. Those are all pre-COVID, but they've had some pretty good turnout. I really think you got to get out there and do some kind of a presentation just to let them know, because if you get kind of these like false insecurities or these false innuendos where these people think, oh my God, I'm going to get taxed to death. Oh my God, how am I going to pay for this? What's this going to mean, to me personally and financially? I think that that's going to be your biggest challenge, is staying out in front of that stuff. And I think that one or two public hearings will really put you in a good position so that you can get your fact finding out there, so that if you've got some of your naysayers or some of the people saying this is what it's going to do, this is what it's going to do, you've got the ability literally to put that out there to the public beforehand at a public hearing. And I really think that that's the thing that I see as being the really biggest path to success on this is literally getting out there. Not that you have to, but I just think it's a good point to get out there and educate the public.
That's interesting, Ron, because that was the big takeaway that John Fowler gave us.
Yeah. And Jan, do you guys have like a Facebook page for your town?
No.
We have a website.
Yeah. Is there any type of interactive or social media that goes on that website where people can communicate?
No, there is a Facebook page, but it's not
Functional.
Private. Well,
Yeah.
We don't run it.
Yeah. I really think getting out there and doing some education, again, not that you need it, by statute, I just think that the devil's always in the details, and the more details you can share and the more you can put your facts out there so that they can't be disputed, the better off you guys are going to have, and just making this smooth as possible.
Thing is, thanks to the governor yesterday, we get to do YouTube Zoom meetings until November 1st.
Really? I haven't heard that. No kidding.
Well, yeah, she extended the state of emergency to October 1st, and the Zoom meeting lasts for 30 days after.
Yeah. And that really makes it challenging. And I'm assuming, what's your guys' baseline time frame? December 31st? Are you going to use that kind of as your end transition period and go January 1 to like June 30 of 2022? Is that what you guys are thinking right now?
Well,
I think so, yeah.
I think so. I mean, I don't think we're that deep into it, but that's kind of the thinking.
Yeah.
But it a good question, because in this time of COVID and stuff,
Yeah.
one wonders, should you lay off for a year? But then on the other hand, I don't
Yeah.
know.
I really think that if it were me, I would go 18 months because of COVID. Like I say, I think that we're going to not know a lot about COVID until January, February, March in the world of government. And if you get knee deep into this transition, I'd hate to come see some kind of not that there'd be a deal breaker, but just something that really makes this even more challenging to you all. And I think the 18-month would be the way to go, especially, coming off this pandemic and really nobody, federal or state, knowing what infusion of capital coming and when and what for.
One quick thing to throw out there. This is going to be basically a reminder for Walter and Jan, and possibly slightly new for John Spear, is one of the other great benefits we have going into this as far as making the case is it wasn't just the select board. The select board has generally been pretty supportive of this concept. When we were doing our last budget, and actually when I did my first budget, transitioning to the fiscal year, collecting taxes twice a year was something brought up by many budget committee members. And when we did our last budget, it was discussed, lightly. And there appeared to be, and gentlemen, please correct me if I'm wrong, there appeared to be pretty routine and across the board support for those changes by the bulk, if not all, of the budget committee members. So our ability to make the case to the citizenry won't just be the administrator and the select board. I believe we have a very strong partner in the budget committee as well.
Oh, what I expect to hear from them is what took you so long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell you guys, a lot of it, like I say, I'd say probably is up 30 plus in the past 5-6 years. I'd say in the past year or two, I've probably been involved with 12 of these, what you guys are doing right now. So you guys are doing the right thing. I'm telling you that. Really, anytime you get a chance to really kind of, benefit and do good for your town and really kind of alleviate, quite frankly, a big tax bill and help out the town in the same breath, I really think that that's the right positive step to be moving in.
Ron, have you ever in your experience seen a town say we made a mistake and we want to go backwards?
Kennebunkport did, but I'll tell you, they quickly, just as soon as they did, they held a public hearing. That's why I asked you what you got for social media there. First time, this was a long time ago, and that's about when the social media got birthed. I know that there were some challenges, and there was one person on the budget committee that was actually moving out of town saying that I hope this isn't going to be a big mistake. And, and I just want to caution you, this is what I would do. And I don't want to say I told you so, but I also don't want to be the person that reads about you guys in the newspaper. Kennebunkport almost said that. And at the 11th hour, Owen, they almost nixed this thing. And if it wasn't for a strong rally and good support by that whole board of selectmen, I'm telling you, it was falling apart at the seams. We got together. We actually had a public hearing. We put all the critics, including that gentleman, in a room. And then we really turned that ship around and got it pointed back in the direction, that it was headed in. So that it should have been headed in.
Okay, John, any final
No, nothing further from me.
information?
Can I just ask one question? Did you guys get that information that I sent you from MMA regarding this subject matter?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just perusing the website and I found that and I said, oh, I'll send this out to you. I just wanted to make sure you got it. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, John.
All right, Ron, thank you so very much.
Yeah, listen, Owen, you guys, let me know what I can do for you. Like I said, there's been plenty of trails blazed before you, and hopefully this will be the path to the least resistance. But you guys are doing the right thing.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you, Ron.
Anything else that we need to cover, or can I adjourn us, or can we adjourn ourselves?
Can I assume that this matter's going to be on the agenda? Is that correct for
It
Tuesday?
is indeed.
Okay.
Yeah. It's number one in old business.
Okay. I'll make a motion. We adjourn.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? John?
Yeah, aye.
Yeah, we have to roll call. Jan?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, Owen.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Owen.